Hey, Roy Marshall Jiu-Jitsu with the Conceptual Jiu-Jitsu vlog, and I'm here with North Carolina's first homegrown world champion black belt and my main instructor, Jason Culbreth. So Jason, we've known each other for way too long.
Yeah.
I was there when you got your black belt back in 2008, so almost 10 years as a black belt. And you know, you were my main instructor for most of my jiu-jitsu journey, and I know a ton about you. You know a ton about me. Way too much for us to ever
discuss on a camera.
But one thing I actually don't think I ever really knew, only a little bit from you, was actually because you were always sort of one of the instructors in the area. Who was your instructor? I mean, I know Greg to an extent, Greg Thompson, but who actually taught you jiu-jitsu?
So Greg was the head of the school, and he did teach some classes, but a majority of my original jiu-jitsu I learned was from a guy named Anderson Dickey. And Anderson he was one of the younger guys that was training back in the day, and I say younger, he was in his 20s. Early 20s, actually. I think he was 20 years old. Good gracious, man. So I think it was 96 or 97. I don't know exactly when I started. I'm not one of these guys that remembers dates because they're insignificant, right? And so, you know, people ask me how long you've been training, I say 20 plus.
Right.
And but yeah, Anderson taught me, spent a ton of time. He would meet me there every day, shellac me all over the mat, and then say, you know, we're going to train mount, and I'd come back tomorrow, and what are we going to train? Well, you didn't get out of mount yesterday, so we'll do mount again. We would do that forever and ever. And then, you know, eventually we did a bet, and he owed me $50 because he lost the bet. And then he said, well, I'll give you your money when you get out of the mount. So I got out of the mount, but he still hadn't given me my money. So Anderson, if you're watching this, I want my $50.
I know, yeah, it's funny because these days when people can just sign up at any jiu-jitsu school, it's easy to say, I started on this date.
Right.
But back then, it was kind of, you know, there was no North Carolina Jiu-Jitsu really. It was just guys with videos, and there was some guys who knew some stuff, and, you know, Greg didn't really open a school and really get it going.
An official school until we went to Durham, right? We had sort of a club there in Hillsborough.
Right, which is where I started.
Yeah, so Tom Garner had given us the ability to start doing it in his aerobics room.
Right. And after that, the Fish House place.
That's correct. And that's when the official school started.
Right.
That's when we actually had a real school and collected dues and payments or whatever you wanted to call them back then. Back
to Anderson, I don't know if you remember this story. This is a funny story, and it's actually always stuck with me for my jiu-jitsu because I had trained and started out with, you know, you and Greg Thompson and all these guys who, you know, had an incredible heavy top game. And you know, and I had developed that, of course, as well. And then around purple belt, I kind of got away from that. I did a little bit more of the jumping around on top kind of game. And Anderson was actually at the Raleigh school. And he said, I think he was still a blue belt.
Yeah, right? He's still a blue belt.
Right. And you said, you know, why don't you roll with Anderson? And so I won't say cocky, but I was stupid, let's put it that way. So I'm rolling, I let him pass, I let him mount me. And then I go to escape round. And unlike what had been happening with some guys where, you know, you try to escape, they counter, you counter, they counter, you counter. My hips didn't budge an inch. I just went, okay, wait a minute. I couldn't bridge, I couldn't move him an inch, like a millimeter. It was like the old days rolling with Greg when he would mount you. And that really just, you know, opened my eyes back to that original way of holding somebody down, not the jumping around and then you jump around and I try to stay ahead of you.
Right.
That's a great game, but the whole idea that if you can just completely dominate somebody's hips and they can't move an inch,
that's right.
You don't need to do all that.
And you move around really, you know, like I tell people all the time, if I'm moving around to get to that position to where I can just completely dominate, right? If I get your back, if I get mount, those are pretty much domination positions. And I'm not going to let you escape. There's no need to do a bunch of fancy moving around. Just to stay here and incrementally climb my way to your, you know, ultimate demise.
Right. And so that really brought me back to that methodology. And that's really what set me down on that road of really exploring kind of pressure and weight, was actually that one roll.
He was amazing at it. His mount still is, I mean, like you said, you'd been training for years when he came back and did that, right? And
I was like a blue belt. Whoa,
yeah. What am I going to get out of this guy, right? Well, he should have, you know, he was one of those guys that probably would have been a purple belt, back at the day, one of the first purple belts around, which I know today that they're a dime a dozen, but back then, man, a purple belt was something else. And so, Greg had his purple belt, and Anderson was ready for his, and he had some injuries and women, and there it goes.
So, along that line, then, this is something I was going to talk about a little bit later, but since it's a nice segue, this is a question I get a lot of times, especially from newer students. They say, oh, I don't want to roll with that blue belt or purple belt because I don't want to waste their time. And how important do you think, because there's somebody I won't name who once said, to a lower ranked person, they said, I'm not going to roll with you, it's a waste of my time, which I always thought was just incredibly disloyal in a sense, because you only got to that rank because other people who were higher than you took the time to do it to you. So you owe it to pay it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can't, but what is your thoughts on rolling with all different belt levels? Like a lot of times, purples just want to roll. Everybody says, oh, iron sharpens iron, so I'm only going to roll with better guys. Well, not everybody can roll with a better guy, and always rolling with a better guy is not the most beneficial thing.
No, not at all. And all iron started out as ore. Right. So that ore had to be taken, heated, molded, shaped, right? Hammered, folded, cooled, processed. So, and then a lot of times they take that sharp iron and they go all the way back to scratch, and they melt it all the way back down again and start all over again, right? So your jiu-jitsu game, when you're rolling with lower belts, first off, it's an awesome opportunity to give back, which should always be happening at your academy, right? The upper belt should always be giving back, helping with the fundamentals of the lower ranked people, right? And the reason why you have a belt is to signify, that under an instructor should signify that you understand their system and what they're doing. You hear a lot of talk today about people having different belts for different visitors and things like that, and I don't know that I'm completely opposed to that, because somebody comes into your academy and they're a 2-stripe purple belt from somewhere else. That's awesome. It's not that they're not a 2-stripe purple belt. They still are. But they're not a 2-stripe purple belt in your system. So if a blue belt asks that purple belt a question about what you're doing in your system, like say somebody comes in, they don't know anything, they ask that purple, they expect the answer from that purple belt. And that guy might not know that, right? So, but anyway, go back, I'm sorry I get on these little tangents. Thanks to Dave Camarillo's got me going off. But anyway, no, so when you roll with a lower belt, you're giving back. You're helping them develop their game, right? You're answering the questions that your instructor might not be available to do right then and there, and you also get the opportunity to develop your new set of skills. And so many, maybe you do everything to the right side. Maybe you scissor sweep to the left side. Well, build your scissor sweep to the right side. Maybe you elbow roll to the left, elbow roll to the right side, right? That helps them learn a different attack. It's a chance that, we always say when you learn a new position, if you go try it on the brown belt or a good purple belt, or heck, even some good blue belts, it's probably not going to work. And so you're going to take a technique that you haven't even begun to refine yet and just throw it out the window and say, this doesn't work, or not commit it to memory, because you didn't practice it enough repetitions. And drilling it is one way to get it to sink in your head, but the other way is to put it into a live roll effectively and do it again and again and again. So you've got to go work with the lower ranked guys than that. So what, you can smash them, but I'm not giving a medal in class. Nobody becomes, I'm the world champion of my class. Who cares? I was working with a guy just the other day. He's a competitor, and he doesn't do that well in competition. He wins some, he loses some, but my standard of what he should be doing because of his performance in class, he should be way up here, and he's actually down here, and he stagnates because he tries to win in class. And so he's doing the same 5 moves over and over again, and he pulls them off for the most part. But the minute he gets somebody who stops him, he can't pull it off.
He's limited in his options.
He's limited in his options. And so I started saying, hey, try this technique. Try that. I don't know how to do that. Just try it. So he started putting it in play the other day, and all of a sudden, it was working. And now he has another option. And that's when you go work with a white belt. I don't have to go crazy and try to smash them or go nuts on them, but I need to refine it so that they get to see the moves done properly, feel the moves done properly, so they can say, hey, I need to work on this position or that position, and I get to develop my skill set. So yes, you always should work with lower belts.
Yeah, what you said, something that reminds me of something I haven't done recently, but I used to do quite often. I need to get back to doing is a lot of times when we start the class for rolling, I'll have people do the first roll, no submissions, and you can't stay in any position for more than, say, 30, 45 seconds. So that you can't just do your 3 things, submit the guy, do your 3 things, submit the guy, do your 3 things. You're forced to do different positions and do different things. Just the first roll, then after that.
Right, that's a great idea.
So this kind of goes into something else I want to talk about. So it's not as different perhaps as it used to be. And certainly when I talk about North Carolina Jiu-Jitsu, I'm mostly familiar with the Hoist Gracie guys, a few others, but North Carolina was, the West Coast for America was Jiu-Jitsu in the beginning. Now the East Coast is big. And in some ways I would argue it's bigger to an extent, or at least very comparable to the West Coast, from Enzo to Marcelo to
the quality
50, the quality
sure.
of, well, the quality
the volume is different in California,
yeah,
right?
But the quality of the competitors,
yeah, for sure.
You got Hobson Mora, Cyborg, all these guys. Yeah, Lucas Lepre, all these guys.
Bruno
Mafficine, all the Alliance headquarters in Atlanta. But still, to this day, we are a little bit, the Hoist guys are a little bit more worldly in their style. We do the modern jiu-jitsu as well, but we still have that old school Greg Thompson, mentality and training system, which was we weren't so heavily influenced, so we kind of just still focused on fighting or whatever the thing is. What do you think people are most surprised about who visit from other schools about here? What do you think they would view the style as, or the way the local Hoist guys or Rock guys are, that might be different from what they're used to?
So today it's different than it used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, we would have people come through town all the time that were from a bigger city, right? Because remember, we're in Podunk, Hillsboro, right?
Right, yeah.
And until we developed a reputation, but people would come through and think, here are these hillbilly guys,
right?
And in this little backwoods town that don't know anything,
right?
And I'm just gonna, all they do is train on video,
right?
And I'm gonna smash them, and that never ever happened,
right?
Right? We had a guy who came in. He was a 2nd or 3rd degree black belt, rolling with Greg, and Greg was a blue belt, and Greg submitted him with every single submission that he knew at the time,
right?
So we had other guys come to town, and you'd always get these weird conversations with people that would call up on the phone and they would try to be humble,
right?
But in their pretend humility, they were very braggadocious,
right?
And so they would always say something like, I've trained around a few places. I trained over here. I went there. I trained with this guy. I tapped this guy. I trained with this guy. Tapped this guy. I trained with this guy. Tapped this guy. So Greg would get on the phone and say, hey, when he shows up here, you don't tap anybody.
Right.
Nobody tap.
Right.
Like you don't tap. Period. And we would smash them.
Right.
And they would go away, and they could never go tell the next guy, well, I was at Team Rock and I tapped this guy. No, it didn't happen, right? And so that was an eye-opener for a lot of people. And then back in the day, we were really known for our guard passing,
right.
Our closed guard passing, right? If you put a closed guard on us, we were super effective at passing it. And now we've gotten to where we don't try to get in closed guard as much, so it's probably diminished a little bit.
Right.
But I think that people get surprised when they come here, at least they come to train with me, that not only do the guys understand the full spectrum of modern jiu-jitsu, but they also understand the old school. Right. And so they get real shocked by the amount of pressure that right. our guys can put on people. And that's, the feedback I get is like, man, your guys have a ton of pressure. They really could pin me. And jiu-jitsu is the art of control, right? So it's a great way to pin somebody and exude your dominance over them. And I think that is pretty shocking to a lot of people when they get here, how much pressure so many little people can put on it. And I think that's because of people like me and like you who came up in that old school system. Right. When we get tired, we still apply this tremendous pressure so we can rest.
Right.
And so they see how effective that is, and they want to do that too.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I'm surprised how surprised people are about that. That people come to my school and they're like, man, I can't do anything. There's so much pressure. And my guys are like, I was actually going kind of easy on the pressure thing, right? Yeah. 2 of my students, they actually moved and they went to a new school, white belts, right? They went to a new school. They're rolling, and a couple of the upper belts, get side control, and they're really squishy. And they actually said, "Oh, I'm sorry if I'm too heavy." And my students just started laughing. They're like, "Are you kidding? Really?"
Right. I still have no teeth poking through my cheek. I'm okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that the passing and the pressure game definitely are something that defined us. So we talk about sort of the ways that we came up. And I know now, like the way you run your school and the way I run my school, is not at all like the way we came up.
Completely different.
And can you speak to that? Do you think, you obviously will think that's a good idea. I obviously think it's a good idea. Why have you changed the way it's done, and what was the change?
Well, my changes have been massive over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always tried to dabble with different things, and so, like everything I talk about, you have to know your why. Right? Back in the day, we were training jiu-jitsu to fight. So our jiu-jitsu was a fight-based, MMA-based jiu-jitsu. Right. We worked on our striking, we worked on our takedowns, we worked on our throws, we worked on our ground work, we worked on our escapes, and we crushed each other. You know, if you find an old school Hillsborough guy, I don't care what belt he is, I assure you he is a tough individual. Yeah. Because if you weren't tough, you didn't stick around. Right? I mean, it was a room full of some of the strongest, pound for pound, we were the strongest school probably in the country at the time. Yeah.
Right? No question. That thing Hoist said about
he was teaching a seminar one time. It was up in Richmond, Virginia, and he told a couple hundred people there, and he's like, so for most of the group, this is what I want you to get to learn. The Hillsborough guys, I want you just to wait for a minute, and I'll give you guys a technique. And then he taught the technique, and everybody was like, what's so special about the Hillsborough guys? What do they get? He said, okay, guys, I have a school bus in the parking lot. Let's go push it around the parking lot. and that was true. And because I was small and I was, you know, not nearly, I mean, I wasn't even on the spectrum with these guys strength-wise. No. So, you know, you find out how incredibly strong that these people are, and the toughness that system bred, right? And that the people that you had. The problem is those guys didn't need jiu-jitsu. Right. Yeah. I wouldn't have fought any of them. I won't fight any of them today. Right. They're bad dudes. Right. They're tough. I mean, they can hit. And you know, as I look at jiu-jitsu and what's the idea, my goal was to bring jiu-jitsu to the people that needed it. And so I had to come up with a teaching system and a style that was friendly to anybody. You know, it didn't matter if you're a super weak person, if you're if you're older, if you're frail, whatever, that you could learn. And so I created an environment and a system that teaches for anybody, and you can walk in at any given day and you can continue through the curriculum and have the confidence when you get your blue belt to know, you know, my goal as a blue belt is that you can handle yourself in a situation, that your stand-up self-defense is good, that your takedowns are good, that you have some basic forms of striking, you have your ground control and your submissions. And so I haven't made it as intense as it was, and I'm a much nicer person. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was, you know, if you couldn't cut it, get out, because nobody was trying to make any money at it. It was our clubhouse, and you can run a business any way you like, and that wasn't a business, that was a club. So our club rules were, if you were a wussy, don't show up. And you know, I'm sure there are lots and lots of people that got exposed to jiu-jitsu back then that thought there's no way those guys are just beating up on me. Right. And today we don't do that.
So talk a little bit.
Yes, I'm the greatest looking guy you've ever seen. I'm very, very sexy, super hot. I have no top lip, which makes me even a better kisser.